Lee Summit is your destination for big city vibes and small town charm.
Head to the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market, where local meets fresh. Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Lee Summit, Missouri.
Hello, Lee Summit. I'm Laura Ingeman, and this is your flash briefing for the week of August 5th. City Council will meet for regular session Tuesday night at 6 in Council Chambers in City Hall. Meetings are open to the public or watch live on the city's YouTube channel. If you can't watch, catch the recorded meeting on demand on the YouTube channel or by subscribing to the Council Debrief newsletter, which breaks down 3 to 4 key agenda items. Subscribe at cityofls.net. The State of the City is scheduled for Friday, August 16th at 11 a.m. at the Missouri Innovation Campus, located at 1101 Northwest Innovations Parkway. The Lee Summit Chamber of Commerce is hosting the luncheon. The State of the City address will be available on the city's YouTube channel and city website at cityofls.net. Join the team at Lee Summit Water Utilities. We have a range of exciting career opportunities for those who thrive in a collaborative environment and are driven to create innovative solutions. Be part of an elite team. Lee Summit Water Utilities is one of only 17 accredited water utilities nationwide. This is your chance to work with the best and make an impact. Apply today at lspeople.net. And have you checked out the Lee Summit Marketplace recently? We have a 40-ounce mug featuring a twist closure lid with a Lee Summit heart. A great gift for anyone. We can confidently say it'll keep your drink cold for up to 24 hours. The LS Marketplace is located in the lobby of City Hall. Find other great items like Lee Summit branded coffee mugs, Tervis tumblers, hats, and more. Show off your Lee Summit pride. It's open 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. Thanks for listening and have a great week.
Traditionally, we think as police officers, those responding to law enforcement needs within the community. But honestly, we are there to serve our citizens, and our citizens do go into crisis. They do have mental health crises, and we're being called to those scenes on a regular basis. In order to help serve those citizens better, we did initiate the Crisis Intervention Team Program. These are officers that are specially trained to de-escalate crisis situations. Recently, we've brought co-responders onto the scene, licensed qualified mental health professionals housed within our police department, and they respond with those officers directly to those scenes where a crisis is occurring so they can interact with that citizen and get them the help they need right there on that scene.
The co-responders are either a bachelor or master level in a behavioral health related field. They wear plain clothes, they don't carry weapons or anything like that.
I have a police radio that I listen to all day. Listen for, those key words: mental health, behavioral health, crisis.
There's a lot of officers that just call for me. I have my own radio number.
I also have the ability to self-dispatch to them and say 982 is en route.
Officers en route, 914, Armstrong.
So typically I arrive after they've made it safe. I'll make contact and get kind of the rundown, and then I just kind of jump right in.
I'm like, hey, my name's Allison. I'm a mental health professional. I'm here to help you. I'm not here to take you to jail or arrest you.
Sometimes all a person needs is a voice, someone neutral, someone outside that, can listen. I do a lot of safety planning, including family, their support network, who's close to you. If they're home alone, who can come over and hang out with you today? Can we lock away your sharps? Can we put up your meds? Do you need meds? Can we get you over to the urgent care to get you assessed for your medications? Some of them also are like, oh, I'm so glad you came. This made me feel so much better.
Our main goal as co-responders is to, one, get people connected to the services that they need, and also divert from emergency rooms and jails.
And they almost get a different view of the police responding. That lets me know you care and the officers care.
Please, please, how can we help you?
My husband has...
In 2020, we had 722 mental health related calls for service. 2022, by that time, 1,479. These mental health related calls for service are increasing. How we're responding to that is increasing the number of crisis intervention team officers we have available, as well as the number of co-responders we have available to respond on these calls.
So what I think is important for the community to know about the co-responder program is that we're here, we exist. All you have to do when you call 911 is ask for us. You know, say, hey, I want a co-responder to respond to this crisis, and we'll go. I was really struggling about 8 years ago on my personal journey with mental health, and I met some amazing social workers and amazing programs that have helped me get to where I am today. I really couldn't see myself doing anything else. We want to help, and that's what we love to do.
So I had a client, we got a call, she had some suicidal ideations, and she really felt that she had nobody. And you know, and getting to know her story and getting to know who comes around and sees you, well then we found a support person and they responded immediately and we made a plan. I called back and checked on her in an hour, and then I checked on her in 2 hours. We were able to get her into the additional services to where she talks to someone every week or more. I just took a person that really just thought they had nobody and nobody would show up for them, and show them you do. And you'll be amazed who is in your corner if you just simply say, I need a little help.
I am Fred DeMoro. I represent District 4. I've been on the council for 4 years, just completed 4 years. They were good 4 years, lot to do. And prior to that, I was on the Charter Review Commission. Prior to that, I spent 7 years on the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission is actually the advising body to the City Council for land issues and development issues. I've always been interested in the city, and I actually, a current council member is the one that gave me the urge to, or push to actually join the Planning Commission. And I just wanted to get more involved. I think he got tired of me asking questions all the time, so he said, let's put him to work. The one thing that we are passionate about, or I'm passionate about, is reducing the burden of property taxes on our residents, and by that we have to attract more commercial development to get those commercial property taxes, commercial sales taxes involved. And as a trickle-down theory, that actually reduces the burden on residents. It sort of move from a bedroom community to a more diverse community tax base. I am Public Works Chairman, and we actually found money for a stormwater rate study. Now, what that will do is we will have a consultant come in and tell us how to actually enact or enable a stormwater rate to build a fund for being proactive on stormwater issues. We have a lot of stormwater issues in Lee Summit. We're surrounded by water. We're surrounded by lakes and river and things like that. And that is a big accomplishment. I know the Public Works chairmans before me had always tried to get that forward, and we finally did. And right now I think we've got an RFP for a consultant. And it's important to remember that we have to keep our infrastructure up, and that's just not stormwater and or water utilities. That's curbs, gutters, sidewalks, and everything like that. I've been a resident since 1986, and when I moved in 1986, it was a small town, small city. And it is very interesting to have seen everything happen in those since 1986. And we have grown immensely. Citizen involvement is very important. I think that it makes us a better community. There are all kinds of people out there that have really great ideas that would fit well in our boards and commissions. And really, it's minimal time invested. They would be surprised of what they can do, the good they can do in a short amount of time. One meeting a month or one meeting every quarter, and really move things forward. And then, help the council with the idea of what the community is actually needing and saying. And that's always important too.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Finance and Budget Committee for Monday, August 5th, 2024. Can we get a roll call, please?
Chair Shields,
Here.
Vice Chair Lopez, Councilmember Carlisle,
Present.
Councilmember Tomorrow.
Here.
All right, next item is approval of the agenda. I have one piece of agenda management. We are going to move the budget calendar presentation ahead of the Visitors Bureau presentation, since we want to have the Visitors Bureau and the Business and Industry discussion one right after the other, since they're related items. So with that amendment, I would look for a motion.
Chair, I move to approve the amended agenda.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. Can we get a vote, please?
Councilmember Carlisle,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomorrow,
Aye.
Chair Shields.
Aye. All right, next we have public comments. Are there any public comments today? We've not received any in advance? Okay. Then we will move on to matters of business. Item 5A, which is 2024-6399, approval of the July 1, 2024 Finance and Budget Committee action letter. Do we have any discussion? I would look for a motion.
Chair,
Are you going to make it, Councilmember Carlisle?
I'll go ahead and make the motion. I move to approve the July 1st, 2024 Finance and Budget Committee action letter.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the action letter. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Tomorrow,
Aye.
Chair Shields.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlisle.
Aye.
All right. Next item is 5B, TMP-3032, an ordinance approving the use of a cooperative contract between Omnia Partners and Forms+Surfaces to purchase site furniture and furnishings as needed, and authorizing the city manager to execute and use the same by and on behalf of the city. Ms. Bloom?
Hi, Sharon Bloom, Central Building Services. We would like to use the Omnia Cooperative to purchase site furniture from Forms+Surfaces. Primarily, this arose for the downtown Market Plaza. So that's how it came up, and I think others may have an interest in using it as well, so for other city projects.
Okay. And this is an agreement that's kind of already in place for different municipalities, and we'd just be sort of piggybacking onto what's the already existing system.
Exactly, yeah.
Do we have any questions or discussion from the committee?
When we use these, is there a not to exceed amount that you spend each time, or you just get to go forth? It doesn't have
That's a
anything.
good question.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not really sure about that, but it does save us a lot of money off the list price. So we really get the best pricing if we go through the cooperative.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Lake may have a comment.
Well, so this will put the contract in place, and then, of course, whenever they issue a PO against that contract, they'll have to come forward if it's over the $75,000 limit that the city manager can assign.
Thank you.
Then I would look for a motion.
Chair, I'd move to send TMP-3032 to the full council for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend TMP-3032 City Council for approval. Can we get a vote, please?
Chair Shields,
Aye.
Councilmember Carlisle,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomorrow.
Aye.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is TMP-3039, an ordinance approving a contractual services agreement, hosting service agreement, maintenance agreement, and bronze level service membership with N. Harris Computer Corporation for CityView software, and authorizing the city manager to execute the same for the city. Mr. Johnson.
Hi, good afternoon. Josh Johnson, Director of Development Services. So setting the stage a little bit here, this was approved for our fiscal year 2024-25 budget to upgrade our existing CityView software. So in order to do that, there's about 4 agreements that need to be executed through council, finance, and budget, ultimately signed by the city manager. So these components are a contractual service agreement. I'll go through what these are as I go through the presentation. A hosting agreement, yearly maintenance agreement, a bronze maintenance membership, and then we are also asking that this be sole sourced, and the reason for that is only the Harris Computer Corporation can really upgrade their own software, so it's one of those. But in speaking with legal staff and procurement staff, it's one of those things to just be very cautious on this. We thought executing a sole source agreement would be the wisest course of action. So The contractual service agreement component of the packet tonight, it's what puts us in agreement with the Harris Computer Corporation and provides for the upgrade. It takes our existing data and plugs it into the new system. It also includes integrations with Microsoft Office. Now that's important because right now, like say our letters that go out in the system, something saying, hey, we've made comments or you need to renew your business license, those are all handled in a more technical manner. What this does is it integrates it with Microsoft Word so that anybody with a certain level of security access could easily just edit a Word document and save it, and then that's going to be the template moving forward. Also, another feature that I think is going to be a net benefit to both us and our customers is it integrates with Outlook, Microsoft Outlook. So right now, before you even go into the software to prioritize what you do, it's going to tell you, hey, you have a task to do. And backing up a second, what this software does for the Development Services Department, the public hearings that council sees, it keeps those on track. It tells somebody, hey, this application came in, you have to review something on it. It tells our project managers when the comment letters are supposed to go out so they can keep the various staff on task. It tracks business licenses. Every business that operates in the city is in this system, so we know when those licenses need to be renewed, that contractors are keeping their licenses up to date. If they're a mechanical contractor, things of that nature, that's tracked in this system. All of our inspections that go out for buildings and infrastructure, that's kept track of in this system as well. And last but definitely not least, our neighborhood services system. So when you're reporting, hey, that grass is too long, that starts the investigation in this system. So coming back to this slide, I meant to set that up earlier, but C-Click-Fix integration. C-Click-Fix is basically LS Connect. So right now, if you report a pothole, that goes right into Public Works' works order system so they can go take a look at that and get that fixed for our customers, our constituents. Right now, when a complaint comes in, like for that grass, like I mentioned earlier, it comes to our administrative staff and they have to go in and manually enter it. It doesn't just go through, there's never been software integration for that. So this is part of what we're paying for with this contract. Electronic plan review. So right now what we're doing, we get a set of PDFs for a project and we make comments based on those PDFs. What electronic plan review is going to allow us to do is circle elements of the drawing, comment right in the drawing, and then the applicant would be able to look at that and make their edits right there. So that's a part of that system. And it also collects our comments as well more automatically. So to me, that's more visual. I think it's going to lead to less crosstalk and breakdowns in communication. It also allows for 40 hours of training. I will say with this being an upgrade, it's a little bit of an easier jump than going to something completely different, but there's still going to be training required. Especially probably of our IT staff as they're going to be running this in the background. That total for the contractual service agreement comes to $191,170. A hosting agreement is also a part of this package. Basically the software and the data will be held in the cloud by vendor-provided facilities. Also, they are guaranteeing restorative services, and if there's a disaster, that they would have the ability to recover the data. This service is $45,802 per year. There's a 4% escalation, and it auto-renews for 10 years. And the auto-renewal is so we're not coming back to this committee every year and then council to renew something that we really need to keep up. That started at 5%, but our procurement and finance staff were able to negotiate that down to 4%. So I think that's something to call out. That's obviously helpful for the city itself. Finally, maintenance agreement. This is what it sounds like. We get a priority response if the system goes down with this agreement. They help us with software updates, things like that, and they make sure that it's going to continue to operate the way it should with this. That runs a little under $112,000, and like that previous provision, it's a 4% escalation for 10 years and it auto renews. The bronze maintenance membership, this is something we're trying out for 1 year. What this includes is They'll send one city employee, they'll pay for their registration at their national conference, which they have every year. The reason that going to that national conference is of benefit is we can see how other municipalities are using this software to see if maybe there's something we're missing or haven't thought of. A health check, that also is in that same arena of what our best practices, or they would talk to us and have an exchange of what does Lease Summit want to do with this software? They could help us get there with that health check, or we can talk through with them what we're doing and they might be able to coach us on what's a better method to get there from a nuts and bolts perspective within the software. This also includes 6 hours of training over WebEx, which is basically like Zoom or another service like that. This is $8,800 for 1 year of this bronze level maintenance membership. And as I mentioned, we're not suggesting an auto renewal on that because we're going to try that out for 1 year and see if it's of benefit or if we want to keep doing that. So I wanted to go over some totals for this whole package. So within the fiscal year 25 budget, the expansion amount for this was $343,000. Tonight's total is a little over $360,000. Now, why does that work out? Well, within the development services budget, we do every year budget to renew the license for that. And we plugged in a little over $93,000. And that's a part of this overall project cost. So when you take the $360,000 and take the $93,000 out of it, it's around $250,000 basically. The annual spend for the maintenance and the hosting is around $168,000. So I wanted to put the dollars and cents there because I found in these presentations sometimes we're going back trying to figure all that out. I think with that I'm available for questions, but as I said, this is really enabling documents to accomplish this upgrade. Thank you for your time.
And this these are all items that were already budgeted for, but we're just doing the actual implementation.
We did note the yearly spend in our expansion request.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the committee? Please, Councilmember.
Thank you, Chair. Josh, 10 years is a long time.
Sure.
Do we have anything built into the contract for if we become unhappy with an aspect of the performance of the companies?
Like most of the like most of the contracts, I believe there are provisions if the relationship breaks down. I cannot speak with detail as to what those are.
That you feel comfortable that 10 years would be, 10 years is not too long. I mean, that's what they wanted, right?
Well, yeah, and we did too, because we didn't want to keep coming back. We've had a pretty good relationship with them since we've had this. I think we've had this around 14 years.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Carlo?
Thank you. I have a few more questions, kind of like his, but so the 4% escalation, is that every year or for the 10 years?
Every year.
Okay, and then it will be auto-renewed every year for 10 years, but in our other contracts, like we'll do a contract with the option to renew every year, but you have to come back in front of us. So this would not come back in front of us at all for 10 years?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, and then his question as well, is there language in that contract to make sure that if we're not happy within those 10 years, that we can get rid of this contract and go on to something else? Which I know you already said you can't answer that, but I didn't know if anybody else might have an answer to that.
Thank you,
Okay,
Dee Dee.
thank you.
No further discussion. I would look for a motion.
Chair?
Yes.
I move to advance to the full City Council, TMP-3039, an ordinance approving contractual services agreement, hosting service agreement, maintenance agreement, and bronze level service membership with N. Harris Computer Corporation for City View software and authorizing the city manager to execute the same for the city, and that would be a recommendation of approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move TMP-3039 to City Council with a recommendation of approval. Can we get a vote, please?
Councilmember Carlisle?
Aye.
Councilmember DeMauro?
Aye.
Chair Shields?
Next item, TMP-3067, an ordinance approving a lease-purchase financing agreement between the City of Lee's Summit and Clayton Holdings LLC for the purchase of new ambulances and authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary to effectuate the same by and on behalf of the city. Deputy Chief?
Yes, thank you, Brian Osterman, Deputy Fire Chief. So, yes, this agreement is for the lease financing terms, which would in effect replace virtually all of our ambulances within the city. Historically, we were part of the VERT program, and we would periodically purchase an ambulance, typically 1 or 2 a year, as it would work out. What that resulted in was the fleet was of many different manufacturer years. Led to a lot of inconsistencies as designs would change, as new technology would come out. Those changes were hard to incorporate through the entire fleet as we just bought them 1 or 2 at a time. So what we did with the prior council, if you remember, was something very similar with our fire truck, with our pumper fleet. We entered into a lease agreement to, in effect, to replace all of the pumpers. Which have not received yet, but they are on order and hopefully in the process soon of getting to us. But when those arrive, just like these ambulances, are all going to be the same design, which will ease a lot as far as fleet management on our side, being able to have an entire fleet of the same year. We're going to have some new ones in reserve. We can fleet manage that and even out the usage. At the end of this term with the ambulances, at the 6-year term, we will own the ambulances outright, at which point we can make a decision on when to enter into a new term to replace those ambulances. The other thing we'll do, it will ease some of the burden on the VERP, as this would be outside of the VERP. Those dollars would instead go to the lease purchase of the ambulances. So the other positive is for the monies that we're spending, we'll actually be able to increase our fleet number by 2. Right now, we're a little bit vulnerable with the number of reserves that we have. If something major was to happen to one, that dramatically affects our ability to keep our ambulances on the road. This will increase our fleet number by 2 for a total of 11 ambulances. We do have 2 ambulances on order from almost 2 years ago that we've not received yet. That's the way manufacturing is right now. That takes a long time to get these in. But at the end of the day, if this is approved, our fleet long-term would be a total of 11 versus the 9 that we have now.
Do we have any questions from the committee?
Okay, so I have a couple things. So you just said that we have 2 ambulances on order from 2 years ago. So we enter into this, we're going to get 11 new ones. Are these 2 that are still on order going to be of the same type?
They'll be the same type. They'll be a varying model year. They're probably going to be the 24, 25 model versus whatever chassis is available when these 9 come in line. So there will be 2 outside of this that will be a different model year, but they will all be designed the same.
Okay, and those are on a different purchase agreement? They're through VERP, right?
Correct.
So this agreement would really just be 9 and
9.
not 11?
Correct.
Oops, sorry about that.
Yep. This is only for the 9, but our entire fleet at the end of the day would be 11.
Correct,
versus,
I gotcha.
Yeah.
And so those 2 are already paid for.
Correct.
They just haven't been delivered.
Correct.
So this agreement is for the 9, and then at the end of this 6 years, we own those 9, but we already own the 2 we ordered.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So will you guys be staying in VERP, or will this be something you continue to do?
So we like I said, we did this the first time with the fire trucks about a year ago, and we haven't received those yet. So we anticipate that at the end of this term, if it works like we anticipate that it would, we would enter into another lease term or self-fund. That was a discussion we had this time as well, whether we wanted to use one-time funds to self-fund this, but working with finance and city admin, this was the preferred route to go through this lease purchase.
So the preferred route because we don't have the money to do self-fund, or because we're getting such a good rate that it's better to leave our money where it's at?
So the rate that we got was competitive. I think tying up the one-time funds for this type of purchase when we wouldn't even receive the product for 2 years, that wasn't very favorable. To use those money for something that we could take immediate action on, I think was preferred.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
And it's been a while since we had the other presentation on the kind of the similar deal, but one of the benefits to having these all basically the same is sort of the muscle memory for the operators, that they know exactly where everything is in the vehicle, and if they're on a different one they usually work, they don't have to think twice about where to find
Yeah,
whatever they need.
with the similar, with them being the exact same model, all the equipment is the same place, the functionality is exactly the same. From our end, the fleet management side, we can rotate them around to balance out the usage. From CVM's standpoint, they're all common parts, so stockability as far as alternators, things like that, they can keep more of those on hand in theory versus having to wait in downtime and ordering and those sorts of things. So there's a lot of benefits to having them all match exactly.
Great. Well, if we have no further discussion, I would look for motion.
Chair, I would move TMP-3067 onto full council for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend TMP-3067 to City Council for approval. Can we get a vote, please?
Chair Shields?
Aye.
Councilmember Carlisle?
Aye.
Councilmember DeMauro?
Aye.
All right. Next item is TMP-3059, an ordinance authorizing the approval of a sole source agreement for the purchase of 3 BMW traffic enforcement motorcycles for the total amount of $90,957.66, and authorizing the city manager to execute all related and necessary documents.
Good afternoon, Mark Stinson, Fleet Manager. This sole source agreement would allow us to replace 3 of the 4 existing motorcycles that we have. They are currently BMWs. This would allow us to continue with BMWs that, much like the fire department, will be very consistent for the traffic officers. They don't have to go out and retrain. We can also continue to use the equipment that is on the existing bikes. Some may change over, but Engel Motors is qualified to install all of the equipment, which benefits the ease of getting the new ones in service. So these are a part of our vehicle equipment replacement program and have been funded and approved through the fiscal year 25 budget. With that said, I think it's pretty straightforward, but I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have it.
Do we have any questions or discussion?
Thank you.
I would look for a motion.
Chair, I move to advance to the full council with a recommendation of approval, TMP-3059, an ordinance authorizing the approval of sole source agreement for the purchase of 3 BMW traffic enforcement motorcycles for the total amount of $90,957.66, and authorizing the city manager to execute all related and necessary documents.
Second.
A motion and a second to recommend TMP-3059 to City Council for approval. Can we get a vote, please?
Councilmember DeMauro?
Aye.
Chair Shields?
Aye.
Councilmember Carlisle?
Aye.
All right, next item is TMP-3061, an ordinance approving amendment number 1 to the budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2025, as adopted by ordinances 9936, 9937, 9938, 9939, and 9940 by amending the authorized expenditures for the city. Mr. Gentry.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. Rick Gentry, Budget Manager. We have before you this evening the first amendment to budget for FY 24-25 fiscal year. This amendment includes what we call our purchase order rollover. We started doing this last year, in which we have purchased authorized expenditures from the prior fiscal year, FY 24, which items may have been ordered, just have not arrived on time, or maybe projects that are continuing over and crossing fiscal years. So this is to move that spending authority from FY 24 into FY 25. So the total expenditure movement is about $5.7 million. Of that, about $2.5 million for vehicles, as you heard from the previous 2 items on the agenda. The lead time on vehicles and equipment is rather lengthy sometimes, so a large amount of that is vehicles. About $777,000 of that will be out of the general fund, and that will become part of the assigned amount of the general fund calculation when they do that calculation at the fund balance for the end of the year. We also have an airport expenditure that at the time we thought was included in the no tax increase bonds, but it was to be funded out of the airports funds. So we've added that expenditure to the budget for FY 25. We have a couple of job title changes in the Development Services Department where they're doing a little bit of realignment of their front office staff that faces the public for a little more consistency, and they can be cross-trained and be able to serve multiple functions up front of the office and serve the customers better. And the last thing is, at the end of FY24, we did budget amendments 12 and 14. Budget amendment number 12 included transferring funds to the ITS budget for audiovisual upgrades here at City Hall. Those projects are in place and in progress. They were able to get one of them completed before the end of the fiscal year, but the rest of those are still in progress. So we're requesting to increase ITS's fund for the City Hall AV improvements. And also we have the Budget Amendment 14, we moved an amount of money over for the support of the ERP project. That's going on, the transition to Workday that's going to be occurring this year. And so the training expenses cannot be paid for out of the bond funds. So they'll be paying for the bond funds as well as paying for some additional staff support, or we need extra staff to help out as the city's regular staff is tied up with the project. With that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee? Member Carlisle.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I heard you correct. So there's an airport expenditure and an ERP expenditure that are in addition to the budget. Everything else is just a carryover from what was approved for 24 but didn't get done, and now it has to go into 25?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So the funds were transferred in 24 to the ITS fund for the expenditure, so the money is there. Yeah.
Right, so it's not truly, I mean, just for those two expenditures, it's an actual budget amendment above what we've already approved, but the rest are moving from 24 to 25, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Seeing none, I would look for a motion.
Chair, I'd move TMP-3061 onto full council for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on to recommend TMP-3061 to City Council for approval. Can we get a vote, please?
Councilmember Carlisle?
Aye.
Chair Shields?
Aye.
Councilmember DeMauro?
Aye.
All right, next item on our agenda is TMP-3070, an ordinance approving the execution of a memorandum of understanding between the Kansas Bureau of Investigation and the City of Lee Summit for the use of Midwest High-Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Award funds and authorizing the mayor to execute the same on behalf of the city.
Good afternoon, John Bunker, Deputy Chief of Police. This is an annual grant award. Had it in front of you a few different times for all of you, but just for a little more transparency, we do have local drug information that comes out, and this is a group that's made up of metro-wide detectives from many different agencies. As you know, a lot of these incidents can grow in complexity, which we would basically outgrow the resources that we can throw at it. So it's a great asset to not only the police department, but to the city in general. This is a grant that pays for the detective that we provide to work with that group. So if you have any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
You have any questions from the committee?
Chair, I move to advance to the full council for approval TMP-3070, an ordinance approving the execution of a memorandum of understanding between the Kansas Bureau of Investigation and the City of Lee Summit for the use of Midwest High-Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Award funds and authorizing the mayor to execute the same on behalf of the city.
We have a motion and a second to recommend TMP-3070 to City Council for approval. Can I get a vote, please?
Chair Shields?
Aye.
Councilmember DeMauro?
Aye.
Councilmember Carlisle?
Aye.
Next item is TMP-3069, an ordinance approving the execution of an addendum to the 2023 Memorandum of Understanding between the Kansas Bureau of Investigation and the City of Lee Summit, Missouri for the use of Midwest High-Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Award funds and authorizing the mayor to execute the same on behalf of the city.
All right, I'll be brief. John Bunker again still. This is, as you said, it's leftover money from last year's federal grant funds. We're going to provide, that's going to be helpful to us because we're going to provide that to our vehicle lease program that saw an increase, so it'll cover that. It's also going to cover some additional overtime that detective saw. So it totals $4,798.
Discussion? I would look for motion.
Chair, I would move TMP-3069 onto full council for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend TMP-3069 to City Council for approval. Can we get a vote, please?
Councilmember Damaro.
Aye.
Chair Shields.
Aye.
Councilmember Carlisle.
Aye.
All right, next item is our moved up one, item J on the agenda, 2024-6411, presentation of the FY 2024-2025 budget calendar. Mr. Gentry.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. Rick Gentry, Budget Manager. Yes, the item before you is our FY 2024-2025 budget calendar. We're getting this out a little bit earlier than we have in the past couple of years for a couple of reasons. One, discussed earlier, we have Workday implementation going in place for upgrading, changing our ERP system. And we want to make sure we can meet our timelines as we implement the new system and going live for the new fiscal year FY 26. So in order to do that, one of the significant changes we need to make to the budget calendar we're requesting is to move the mayor and council approval of the budget from the month of June back to the month of May. So we went through the calendar, fine-tuned it, and we've shaved a couple of weeks off here and there for the departments to where their deadlines aren't moving significantly. And a lot of the heavy lifting will be with the budget team, as we'll have to compact a lot of the work we do down to a shorter time period in which to get everything reviewed, finalized, and still do the same number of presentations to the committee as we've done in the past for revenues, general fund expenditures and expansions, and the public safety sales tax, and all the other funds that we bring forward to the committee before we go before council with a public hearing. So that's really the biggest significant change, is that change. And this also impacts our Parks Department and the CIP plan, because they usually try to coordinate and get their approvals in place with the Park Board with the park. And then CIP plan still needs to go through the appropriate committees, public comment period, and everything before it comes before the council for approval. So that's why we're wanting to get this out early. And we're also putting the budget calendar on our public website this year. Before, it's been the documents attached to the packet. Now we put it where it'll be updated. It'll be one place where everyone in the city can go to, and it's public facing, so everyone in the city can see the deadlines and timelines and see where we are in the process. With that, if there's any questions.
And this is just informational. You don't need an action from the committee on this, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the members of the committee? Nope.
All right. It's kind of the save the date. So
no, we appreciate the hard work, and I know it'll be really nice for everyone on council to see things just a little bit earlier, have a little bit more time to think them over. So I think it's a great change.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us to item I, 2024-6389, presentation of the Lease Summit Visitors Bureau Strategic Plan Overview and Request for Investment. Before we dive right into the presentation, I just wanted to kind of level set a little bit. So we had this discussion at City Council before, and it was directed back to committee to have dig a little bit deeper. So we have seen some of this material before. Tonight's a chance for us to dig in a little bit more, ask some more questions. We've had a chance to look at kind of the budget overview. And then the next item on our agenda is going to be discussion of the Business and Industry Fund. So my thought is that we can hear the presentation, ask questions, look at the funding request, and then roll that right into a discussion of the Business and Industry Fund about what we want to do in terms of policy for that fund, how much of a deficit budget we might be comfortable running, what we want to make recommendation. We don't have to finalize that policy tonight, but I think it'll be informative to have those conversations in tandem, and then to make a recommendation kind of together to the full council of here's what we think of as a good policy for this fund going forward and what our thought process is there, and then here's the specific recommendation that we have for the destination marketing organization. Does that so we can definitely dig into the actual funding request in our questions after the presentation, or we can wait and have that as part of the Business Interesting Fund kind of add after the presentation. All right. Way.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Bob Johnson, Treasurer of the Visitors Bureau. And
Yes, we had members from our bureau talk to the Visitor Bureau visit with the council the other night, so I concur. We certainly don't have to start over with everything. But I did want to emphasize a couple things. There are 12 citizens, including 3 members of the city staff, that are a part of this organization, and the 12 of us come from all kinds of backgrounds, and for the most part, it isn't necessarily tourism-based. And so we know we have to have assistance from outside sources. In particular, I did mention the other night, we did talk about we need a marketing plan, and we don't know what that's going to, what marketing consultants will offer for what prices and so forth. And then also we really don't know how to emphasize what is our market initially, and I know in our presentation that we didn't talk about the other night, but we did talk about something maybe within a 250-mile radius of the city of Lee's Summit, which would include, St. Louis, Wichita, Des Moines, Omaha, so forth. So we really don't know how to approach bringing people to Lee's Summit, whether they are day trips, overnight trips, and what have you. So my point is that we will need some assistance, and we don't know exactly what that will cost. So what we did do is as we mentioned the other night, yes, we're going to have an executive director, and that until we have a budget per se, there really won't be an executive director. And we're hoping that once this fiscal issue, when I say issue, I just mean the topic, is dealt with, then we know what budget we have to deal with, and of course we will post probably fairly rapidly the opening of an executive director position, and we hope that person understands tourism marketing. I am sure that we're going to, because it's kind of popular, to have a brand message for tourism, for Lee's Summit tourism. So these things, well, it don't happen overnight. And so it's not like, yes, we made a request the other night for $425,000 for the first year. That's not going to be spent as of tomorrow, obviously. So what we wanted to do this evening, and on the screen, is a revised plan that we met last week on, and basically that total that you see and it's on the screens totals $395,000. And we don't know for sure when the executive director will be appointed and start. It could be 2 months from now, it could be 3. We don't know for sure, but as soon as that position is dealt with, certainly we want to get into a marketing concept of what is our initial view. But we wanted to present the initial budget estimates. For year 2 and year 3, we assume we have the executive director and the marketing concepts dealt with. And we'll know more about specifically the 4th item, marketing, advertising, promotion, and events. I'm stunned by when somebody tells me what our magazine, our document on an annualized basis will only cost you $31,000. That's a chunk of money. Whatever we need to whether it's 250-mile radius, I don't know what that's going to be. But whatever the marketing area is that we think that we want to initially start with, what does it take to communicate with several million people in the central part of the country? And then obviously it's the organizations that we might want to talk about more. Yes, I'm involved with youth sports, and I know what kind of, on the softball side anyway, I know what kind of that requires to bring in tournaments. Baseball's involved. Maybe we should have more soccer and football programs here, but that's what we need. We don't have an answer for those kinds of questions now, so we don't know what it takes to visit trade shows, advertise the availability of Lee's Summit being available for tourism and encourage tourism, and then what does it take to, I mentioned the other day, I don't mean to go to Los Angeles, but what's a billboard cost in Los Angeles? I don't think we're going to do Los Angeles, but Wichita's there, Omaha's there. We want people to know we exist. So this is what the initial request for our organization is, the Visitors Bureau, and it totals $395,000, as I mentioned, for the now current fiscal year. And I would certainly, any questions you have of me or our 3 other officers that are also here?
Thank you. Do we have specific questions from the committee at this point? I know, I think we received a copy of the strategic plan overview separately in the budget document. So I've had a chance to kind of look through
Sure.
that and see kind of big picture what you're looking at, but I understand a lot of the specifics of what this is going to look like on the ground. You won't really know until you get
Yeah,
the
well,
person in
we certainly
place
will need
and-
assistance from people that this is what they do. And, yes.
So at this point, you're looking for a budget of $395,000 for the first year, and then I think when you presented to us before, you talked about escalating about $25,000 a year. So are you talking?
Well, we'd assume that the second year would be what we had suggested the other night, which is $350,000 for the second year, $375,000, I'm sorry, $450,000 for the second year, $475,000 for the third year, because people will be in place at that point in time.
Okay.
And whatever, and obviously we will know what it may take to communicate with a population within 250 miles of Lee Summit, for example. Just what does it take to let that general area of the central part of the United States know about us, and what worked, what didn't, and so.
And I assume that this will be the kind of thing that's not an on-off switch, that there's kind of a dimmer switch, that the more money you get, the more advertising you can do, that you could put up more billboards, more ads. I guess what I'm saying is that if you see over these few years that it's going really great and the advertising is working and you feel like you want to expand the reach to this, and this.
Oh, yeah.
Then
Certainly,
the hotel tax receipts are going up, then that might be an increased budget, but,
Yes.
and if the tax receipts aren't coming in, then it might be a decrease in the amount of.
Well, I hope it
advertising you
doesn't,
do.
yes, but the answer is I hope it doesn't go in a downward trend, but.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, that's.
But I guess what I'm saying is, like, this is kind of a budget that we can look at and say, this marketing budget gets us, once they do the plan,
Well,
this level of ads, but then you can add or subtract in it.
Or not only billboards or whatever, but also there are, there are entities that plan senior age trips across the country, and you may, and
Yeah,
some of
there's
those may
trade
be,
shows
they're
and-
working more in the central part, west coast. Yeah, we don't, the 12 of us for the most part do not know what kind of activities are there, but and who has an emphasis initially. And I'm only throwing out the 250 miles because that's kind of what we had talked about as an organization early on.
And none of this is intended as
Oh, yeah.
criticism or anything, just kind of to think on for the committee that we have to start somewhere. We don't know exactly what this is going to look like, and then we can kind of dial up or dial down based on how receipts are coming in, what the marketing plan is that. But I think the hope is to put a 3-year PSA in place. That was what was requested.
That'd be correct.
So we'd be kind of doing this initial plan, and then we'd need to evaluate after 3 years and figure out. Do you have any specific thoughts?
I have one question. I just want to clarify something, Bob, is the $395,000 that we're looking at right now. Of course, you're going to get asked for 4 1/4, and so the $395 should be covered.
Yes.
What if in the second year you don't spend $395? What if the estimates are off just a little bit? Would you ask less when the renewal comes up on the second year? Or would you, you talked about expanding the reach, and I completely understand that. But what if the 95 comes in a lot shorter and you have enough money to expand? I'm just throwing that out.
I think that's certainly a discussion. I mean, I don't have an answer for that. The 12 of us have not talked about. We're trying to initiate the process right now and not talk about the year 2 already. But I would say from my perspective, I am certainly not afraid to talk to the city council about what we're doing at any point in time. And what balances are there in the next fiscal year. Again, I'm not opposed to talking to the city council about it. So I just want more sports organizations. Those actually bring, not organizations, those bring people. When you have activities, it does bring people into the community. And it's just a matter of making sure that all youth sports are participating.
Because the reason I ask is because if the first year is successful, and I hope it is, and the word of mouth gets out there, we may see an influx naturally because of word of mouth, rather than working, spending money for promotional materials.
I think that the day trips from them, and I don't know what mileage area is that, 200 miles to 150, but certainly in the metro area, I really view that, the people on the west side of the state line and St. Joe and whatever, hear more about Lee Summit and what we're doing and what activities are available.
and places to eat and shop.
I know when I go places, when I think about going places, I look at their DMO, Tourist Bureau, whatever you want to call it, and I look at what's available, but I also, my last thing I do is always go on YouTube and look at videos and see what people say and see what's actually this stuff that I've seen in the promotional materials looks like, see if it matches the text or matches what's reality. And so I think, I mean, you know, there's so many ways to find out what a city or a region has. And I think it's important to put the word out there, absolutely. Get the word out there, get people talking, but, you know, sometimes things.
Well, you know,
fall in place.
initially, this will be housed in City Hall. Obviously, our goal is to have it at some point in time, not tomorrow, not 3 years from now, a separate location within the community. That by itself will draw people to come. As people are coming through a community, they'll go to a visitor's area that's by itself to ask for information, directions, what have you. So I'm not sure they're going to stroll into City Hall and ask that. I don't know, but.
It's always important to have a person that really knows the community.
Yeah.
That can answer every question. And
You know, we have talked about it at our meetings, the concept of people go to convenience stores and they're going to buy whatever they're going to buy at a convenience store, and then they're going to ask the person checking them out, what's sort of do in this community? So we might want to engage in a program that kind of helps educate the employees in that general sector how to answer those kinds of questions. Not just somebody that says, oh, I don't live here, I don't know.
Thank you, Chair.
So are there any other questions from the committee? And do you want to have a discussion about their budget right now, or do we want to roll into the business industry fund and then talk about it in that context?
I think we can go into the budget and industry discussion, but just to clarify, instead of the $425 for your first year ask, now you're at $395 for the first year ask?
That is correct.
So for the 3 years, it'd be $1,320?
I haven't.
$395, $450, $475?
Well, it'd be $395, $450, and $475. I haven't added those three together.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if you all are free to stick around,
Well,
there
sure.
might be additional questions that come up.
No,
I can't promise, but,
Yes, we're staying.
okay.
Yes.
So we'll go
And,
ahead.
you know, this is.
The women behind you, that's a smart.
Thank you for the leadership. Also, it's, and we don't have members, we don't have partners, we don't have at this point in time. So I realize when that shows when that 395 now will show compared to downtown Main Street requesting this or whatever it is, it's a huge difference. We stand out. But we are building from scratch.
And I think this has been the vision of the council for a while. It's not it shouldn't be a shock to anybody on this dais or at the full council meeting.
I think so.
We appreciate the presentation. I think we're gonna go ahead and have the full discussion about the business industry fund, and then as a part of that, we'll talk about what
and my colleagues, I'm sure, will answer questions too. The women behind me can answer questions as well as I can. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Stoyanov. So for this discussion, we talked a little bit before this meeting about kind of wanting to think through what best practices are, what kind of a reserve balance is healthy for this type of fund, and you were going to look and see if there were any recommendations from your national organization. Is that GFAO? I always get that wrong.
Yes.
See, I always get it wrong. So what can you tell us?
All right. Eric Stoyanov, Budget Manager. So starting on the topic of policy, so honestly, most guidelines tend to lean towards general fund reserve policies or enterprise fund reserve policies. So as I was looking, there aren't any that I found that were special revenue, other than I did find one city. They put theirs for their lodging tax at about $300,000 was their minimum, but their total revenues were $7.7 million, so it came out to like less than 1%. So basically almost just an insurance that some money is always there. Kansas City, Missouri also did specify special revenue funds, but in their policy guideline, it just says no specific reservation of fund balance is created for this. It's basically up to their legislative body to make that decision. GFOA does have a template out there. It's more, again, towards general fund, but it's a template to kind of calculate what a fund balance makes sense for yours, looking at things like extreme events, revenue stability, expenditure volatility, things of that nature. I think we walked through it before when we were doing the general fund.
When we talked about this with the general fund, we were concerned about our bond rating and making sure that we were ready for a rainy day and, never being able to, being in a position where we couldn't pay our bills. This fund is kind of different. If this fund ran down to zero, that's not going to affect our bond rating, right? Because this isn't what we're using to pay all of our city expenses.
And with the city, obviously, expenditures and revenue can be volatile. With this one, it's more fixed expenses because we know what these PSA amounts will be. And like right now, we know the fund balance is pretty high. Working through that exercise, it did say like 17 to 24% would be the recommended balance if we were to try to, but again, that was more general fund focus, not special revenue.
Yeah, and just to kind of set expectations that, not that I think we're going to set a policy where we run it down to zero, but in the unlikely event that happened, it's not going to impact our ability to borrow as a city or our bond rating or anything like that, like it would with our general fund.
I wouldn't think so. I'm not the best expert to speak on the bond rating discussion. I've been involved in those calls when we were going through.
Concern about when we're looking at things like this. So, okay. So there weren't any specific guidelines for this type of fund available.
No, it's more revenue in, revenue out, and then some just kind of keep a little bit there just to make sure there's always money available. So, and then we also talked about kind of the historical perspective of this fund. And so just putting some numbers together, starting with FY22, these are, you guys saw this in the other spreadsheet, I think at City Council a few weeks ago. The only number that changed slightly from what you guys had seen was the administrative fees. I think it was just $30,500 for 25, 26, 27. That's actually 5% of the revenues. So it correlates to the business and industry total revenue line. And then the payment discount is 2% off of those revenues. So again, that's why those numbers are slightly different, not just a fixed number. And so you can see on the expenditure side, those ones, and then this is the assumption that all of those funding requests are funded as asked. And this also has the $395,000 number for the DMO that they changed. And then, so you can see on this one, if all of those funding requests, including $275,000 is kind of a placeholder right now for EDC because no formal request has been made. But expenditures would exceed revenues by about $200,000 every year for the life of these PSAs if we were to move forward as funded. And again, as you'll see, revenues are a little harder to accurately predict on this fund, but these for FY26 and 27, going off the assumption some of the work the DMO is doing, we're starting to see results of that. Also, we have Discovery Park coming online, so that'll be 2 new hotels in the city. So that's why the revenue figures in those 2 years are higher than what we have seen recently. And then, to your point, fund balance. So as of right now, year to date for FY24, the fund balance for the BNI sits at just shy of 1.5 million. So as we talked about policies, most policies state a percentage of revenues or a percentage of expenditures. So both of those are in this. Obviously, those are pretty high percentages compared to 17 or 24% of expenditures or revenues. And again, all of these numbers and for future years are assuming those full funding requests are approved. And so we also talked about how revenue is a little bit more volatile in this fund. So the darker green line, bluish line, that's the revenues. The lighter one is expenditures, and then the yellow is fund balance. So you can see, obviously, in recent years, we've only had the one PSA, and so revenues have exceeded expenditures by a significant amount, which has caused the fund balance to increase. Then you can see it'll be a sharp drop-off over the next 3 years, but still, even looking historically at that fund balance, it's still a pretty high fund balance, even if we were to move forward and do the deficit spending by $200,000. And here's a look at the revenue trend. Some of our revenues move very nicely, 3% annual growth. This one is not one of those, so it moves a little bit more. You can see, obviously, FY20, FY21, those were the COVID. Then we had a nice bounce back, starting to level off a little bit, and then the 26, 27 are starting to increase again as, again, Discovery Park comes online and we see some of the DMO efforts realized. And then just again to highlight the revenues. So these are the percentage year-over-year changes for just the hotel tax. And so see, it's pretty all over the board. We had that huge spike, kind of that COVID rebound right there in FY22. Then we got to 4, 3, 2. It's starting to level off. In the 15 and 10% is with that new hotels coming online, but would anticipate this would start to level off a little bit. It seems like anytime we have a spike, it starts to kind of revert back to that 3 or 4% range. And so that is kind of what I had as a scene setter to facilitate the discussion, but available for any questions that you all may have on the revenue side or the BNI fund side. Yep.
And the idea, I know we're when we talked about this at full council, we're trying to be conservative with these estimates, but the hope is between new hotels coming online and these different organizations doing their jobs, that hopefully those revenues will increase and maybe increase a little bit faster once we have a marketing organization that's trying to draw people into those hotels, right? That's the goal, right?
Yeah, that's the goal. Yeah, it's always hard to see, especially looking at occupancy rates currently at all of our hotels. They kind of
I mean, we can't predict the future,
Yeah.
but if this does what we hope it does, then those numbers go up. So it maybe go up more than we would expect based on the historical trend because we're investing more into this marketing effort.
Yes.
Okay.
That'd be nice.
What are our initial thoughts?
Well, I was going to ask what you just asked in a little different way because where'd Eric go? There he is. Eric is missing.
Yep. I'm back.
Of course, the 432 is pretty, self-describing that that's where it is right now and where it's going to be in FY25. Now, the 15 and 10%, is that based completely on the progress or the performance of the DMO and the new hotels? Or are we seeing, like the 26, have you put in, does that 15% include World Cup and things like that?
So that does not include World Cup at this point, no. No, obviously we'll see an increase, or I would anticipate an increase, but no, that does not. That's just Discovery Park and DMO efforts at this point. And again, likely conservative, and the World Cup will likely help, but it would be a one-off event type of thing
Right.
and not recurring.
And that's sort of why I'm asking, because the 15% would be, if it's the validity in the 15% that you've got the World Cup built in, and then we would, that 15 would become, well, it is becoming 10 and 27, but would kind of level off again.
Yes.
Because after the newness of the hotels, it's not going to wear off in 2 years, but I mean,
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, I don't want that to start declining again after the World Cup. That's
Yes. And just to provide some perspective as well, that FY18 number, that 20% growth that we see there, that is when our most recent hotels had come online. I think the 2 Holiday Inn Expresses, that's when we saw a big jump there. But again, you're kind of seeing 20 and 21 are a little bit hard because those are the COVID years, so those are kind of outliers there. But you can see already in FY19, you're starting to dip down into that 17 or the 7% range. So yeah, a little
So
nice
instead of-
spike, but then reverts to the mean a little bit.
So instead of a single digit a graph, we would probably be closer, even going out 28, 29, a double numbered.
Yeah, I
Number.
went out to 28, 29, and I went back to kind of just the 3%. It's just so far out that it's hard to, and since Discovery Park is not online yet, once we get those data points and we see, because the other concern with Discovery Park that at least I have is cannibalization of current hotels, because it's not like all of our hotels are 100% occupied right now. So if that was the case, then yeah, Discovery Park would really help us out significantly. I still think it will help us out, but I do think it could cannibalize some existing hotels that are currently in the city, and it's not going to be just total gains over what we're currently seeing.
And I think you're going to see some of that. I think the World Cup, my personal opinion, World Cup, everything's going to be full. And then after that, people are going to pick and choose two shiny new hotels. They're going to want, if it meets their budget, they want to stay there instead of another I won't name anybody, but
Yeah.
everybody knows who I mean. Thank you, Chair.
And this graph that you have up right now, this is year-over-year changes, right? So you see that spike in 2022. The revenues didn't drop in 2023, they just didn't go up as fast,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Okay, so even though, like, you see that 2018 spike and the next year lower, that's still more money than was coming in 2017. It's just not
Correct.
going up exponentially like
Yep.
that, right? Okay.
And that's why you see the huge percentage, because our revenues had dropped so low during COVID.
Yeah,
That you see the
yeah.
huge 44% spike in
Right,
22.
everybody stayed home during COVID and they all wanted to travel
Yep.
right after, so that makes sense. Councilmember Carlisle, do you have any specific questions, comments?
I wouldn't say really questions, but from what I see, from what you have put together for us, we could fund all three of these PSAs for the 3 years at the level requested or our holding point for the one that hasn't been requested yet, and we would still have an excess balance for a few years. So we can get all the way through this first funding cycle, and we're still going to be in excess. We don't have to worry about really draining this budget to zero, or draining this fund to zero, correct?
Yeah, even, again, we're probably conservative on the revenue side, but even then, the FY '27, that would be our ending fund balance, would be the 841,000.
Okay.
Yeah, everything goes to plan.
Thank you. And then the only other thing that I had to add was, you know, I don't feel like this fund needs to have a reserve balance. You know, the, I guess, ordinance is what put this into play, but the question that went on the ballot said this is for tourism. We didn't say we were gonna hold any money back from it, so I don't see any reason for us to have a reserve balance in this if we don't need to.
I think that's a good point. I think when I look at the revenue fluctuations, to me, that's a good reason to have a little bit in reserve, that because we can say, especially when we get to the point of hopefully being at a steady state of not deficit spending, that we expect that this fund might go up or down 5% a year. So we want to keep a little bit in there in case, you know, this year's a little bit low and next year is a little bit higher, so we don't have to mess people's budgets around. But I don't feel like we need to have a 35% balance in there like maybe we want. So I think that's well taken. You know, my thought on this is similar to what I said in our full council meeting is, you know, this is a time to be a little bit bold, get all these organizations up and running, and then reevaluate in 3 years. See if they've done what they hope they're going to do, and these revenues are up, and, you know, new hotels are online, and they're not just taking away from the old hotels, they're filling up the old ones, filling up the new ones, then that funding level could continue or possibly increase. And if they're not, then it's going to be a natural. That's kind of where I come down on it. I don't know if.
I would agree, yeah. I mean,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think it's important to, especially with what we have coming in 2026, it's important for us to get online as quickly as possible and hit the ground running with this. And if that means that we have to fund into a deficit, that's fine. We have the money. And then like you said, in 3 years, we can relook at, which in 3 years it's going to be skewed because we're going to have, you know, the World Cup be here. It's not like every 3 years we're going to have an event like that happen. But still, it'll give us something to go off of. It'll give us more history, and then we can return to this then and look at it. So I agree. Thank you.
Yes, I agree also. You know, the only unknown, and you know, is the LSEDC funding, and of course, this is assuming the 2020 level, which, you know, is probably pretty close. But that's the only unknown that, if I'm going to be uncomfortable, that's the only thing I'm uncomfortable about, that we don't exceed that balance for 3 years. And I guess we are in control of that too. I mean, I think we're going to be fine right now, looking at it right now. So yeah.
And this does leave us with these conservative revenue projections. It still leaves us with a pretty fat fund balance, so that has some room for expansion. Want to talk at all about a balanced policy of, 10% or something like that? Or do we want to just leave that for 3 years from now for council?
I think if we needed to leave anything, I would say to leave our administrative fees, make sure we have at least that. But if there's no balance, there's no reason to administrate anything, right? So I don't think we need to have a discussion about what our fund balance should be in this fund at this point. If the full council would like to have that conversation, obviously they can, but I don't think we need to have that discussion now. In 3 years, if it looks like we're gonna eventually not have the money here, maybe that's a discussion we should start having, but I don't feel the need for that right now.
Yeah, I'd rather put all the pressure on the DMO to increase those hotel fees, or not fees, but taxes, yeah. So we'd be self-sufficient. It's all on you guys. No, I'm comfortable with no fund balance. Thank you.
So I think then it sounds like we have consensus to move forward on the DMO's requested budget of the 395, increasing to 450 and then to 475. So staff can start working with them on a formal PSA and bring that forward to council. And then at our next council meeting, we can just kind of report this discussion out, just let folks know that this was our thinking in terms of why we don't feel like, as opposed to general fund, this one doesn't really need a minimum balance, and why we're comfortable spending down some of this balance over the next up getting the DMO off the ground and all that. So
sounds great to me.
All right, I think we are all settled then. Thank you again to the members of the Visitors Bureau Committee for being here. Really looking forward to you guys getting off the ground. And that will take us to Roundtable.
The only thing I would bring up is that in September, we will be setting the levy. And so that is a quick turnaround. So I just wanted to mention that here. We'll try to get that information out as soon as we have it, but we have to wait on the county to provide that information. And then I know we have a couple of meetings where it's MML or that joint session. So on the 24th is the date that we'll actually formally bring it to council. So I just wanted to kind of start that awareness. And again, as soon as we have some figures, we'll try to get those out to council.
That's setting our property tax levy, and that's going to depend on what the assessment levels come back at. Can you have just a mini presentation about that at City Council before that comes to the hearing, so that we understand what's coming forward? Because I know last time we discussed that there was some debate about whether we wanted to do a 5% increase or a 4% increase, but we were right up at the deadline. We really didn't have a chance to have that discussion. So is that something that we can
I think so. As we get closer, probably later in August, but we'll try to get something.
But before it's the day of the hearing, have a chance
Correct.
for everybody to know what's coming up and think it through.
Well, yeah, yes.
I do have a question to that effect. I believe last year, I hope I'm not dreaming this, but we had an estimated number that was not real accurate. Are they going to give us a real number, you think, in September, or is it going to be an estimated number again? I'm just, crystal ball.
Crystal ball. We hope they'll give us actual numbers, but, again, maybe since this isn't an assessment year for them, maybe they will have a better, more accurate figure, but who knows what's going on there. So we'll just get what we can to you.
We won't delay our tax levy. I don't think we can we? No, we can't.
No, we cannot.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
All right, then we will adjourn at 5:10 p.m. Thank you.